Polar Bears Past Bedtime. Today we will be reading Chapter 5 and 6. Chapter 5. You're It. The dogs were barking wildly at the two small creatures playing in the moonlight. "Polar bear babies!" cried Annie. One roly-poly club leaped onto the other. Then they both rolled through the snow. "Hi, little bears," Annie called. The cubs jumped up and shook themselves like wet puppies. Then they stammered towards Annie, who rushed to greet them. "Hi, hi, hi," she called. "Wait," shouted Jack. "Where's their mother?" He looked around for the mother bear, but she was nowhere in sight. "Maybe they're orphans," he thought. Jack looked back at Annie. She was wrestling with the little bears in the snow. She was laughing so hard that she couldn't stand. Jack started laughing too. He carefully put the polar bear mask into his pack. Then he ran to join Annie. She was running with the cubs across the snowy tundra. One of them raced to her, tagged her, and then ran away. Annie ran after the bear and tagged him back. "You're it," she said. Jack and the other cub joined in. Soon, Jack and Annie and the two cubs were all chasing each other over the moonlit snow. They ran until the two cubs fell down ahead of them. The cubs lay perfectly still. Panting, Jack and Annie stared at them. "Are they hurt?" Andy wondered out loud. Jack and Annie ran to the cubs. Then just as they leaned down to see if they were all right, the cubs jumped up. They pushed Jack and Annie over and stammered away. "They were pretending," said Jack. He laughed. Jack and Annie charged after the cubs. They ran over the white tundra until they came to the frozen sea. Jack looked around. "They're pretty far from the igloo. I don't hear the huskies anymore," he said. "Maybe we should go back." "In a minute," said Annie. "Look." The bear cubs had scooped up a snow bank. They were on their backs, sliding down the bank into the ice-covered sea. Jack and Annie laughed. "It's like sledding," said Annie. "Let's try it." "Okay," said Jack, "but then we have to go back." Jack followed Annie up the snow bank. He clutched his pack in his arms. Annie laid on her back. She whooped as she slid down the ice. Jack followed her. "Watch out below," he shouted. The little bears were sitting at the bottom. The little bears were sitting at the bottom of the snowbank. One gently whacked Jack in the face with her furry paw. Then she laid down. "I'm tired too," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. "Let's rest for a minute." Jack and Annie looked up at the orange moon as they laid beside the cubs. All they could hear was the wind and the soft breathing of the cubs. "That was fun." "That was fun," said Annie. "It was," said Jack. "But we'd better head back to the igloo. The seal hunter's probably looking for us. Plus, we have to solve the riddle." Jack rolled onto the side and tried to stand. Crack. "Uh-oh," he said. He went back down onto his knees. "I think we're on thin ice." "What do you mean?" said Annie. She started to stand. Another crack rang out. "Uh-oh," she said. She carefully laid back down. The polar bear cubs moved closer to Jack and Annie. They made little crying sounds. Jack wanted to cry too, but he took a deep breath. "Let's see what the book says," he said. He reached into his pack into the Arctic book. He took the mask out first and handed them to Annie. "I took these from the igloo by mistake," he said. As he started to reach for his Arctic book, he heard the loudest crack of all. Crack! "We're not even moving and the ice is cracking," said Annie. Just then, there was a new sound. A low, snorting sound. It came from the top of the snowbank about 50 feet away. Jack looked up. Staring down at them was a giant polar bear. "The polar bear's mother," whispered Annie. Chapter 6. Flying Bears. The cubs whimpered louder. They wanted to get to her, but they're afraid of the ice, whispered Jack. Annie petted the cubs. "Don't be afraid," she told them. "We'll get you back to your mother." The big polar bear growled. She paced back and forth, sniffing the air. Annie kept patting the two cubs and whispering to them. Jack looked in the book for anything that might help. Finally, he found something. Even though a female polar bear can weigh as much as 750 pounds, she can walk on thin ice and hold a person by balancing her weight and sliding her paws over the ice. "Oh man, that's incredible," whispered Jack. He watched the mother bear walk down the snowbank. One large side feet, she creeped about the edge of the frozen sea. She tried to step onto the ice, but each time she did, it cracked, and she had to retreat. At last, she found a firm spot. Then the polar bear stretched out her forelegs and laid on the snow ice. Slowly, she moved forward, pushing herself with her claws. "Is she coming for her babies?" said Jack. "Or is she coming to get us?" "I don't know," said Annie. "Hey, let's put on the mask." "For what?" said Jack. "Maybe they'll protect us," said Annie. "Maybe she'd think we're polar bears too." "Oh, brother," said Jack. But Annie gave him a bear mask. He took off his glasses and slipped it on. Jack peered through the mask holes. It was hard to see the huge white bear sliding over the frozen sea. He squinted. That helped the polar bear look at her cubs and let him take a deep moan. The two little bears carefully went to their mother. She licked the cubs and touched her nose against each of theirs. Then they crawled onto her back. "They're safe now," said Jack. "Even if the mother breaks the ice, she can swim with them to the shore." "Yeah, I just wish she wouldn't leave us behind," said Annie. The mother bear slowly turned her body around. Then she pushed off with her hind legs. With her cubs on her back, she began to slide away. "Let's try moving like her," said Annie. "But we could break through and freeze to death," said Jack. "If we just stay here, we'll freeze too," said Annie. "Remember, the seal hunter said his people had learned from polar bears." Jack took a deep breath. "Okay," he said, "let's try it." He laid on his stomach. He spread out his arms and legs. Then he copied the bear. He pressed his mittens against the ice and pushed off, sliding his feet. Amazingly, there was no cracking sound. "Grr," he groaned. He pushed off again. He heard Annie sliding behind him. He kept going. He pushed the sled. He pushed again and again and slid again. He made the movements over and over until something happened. He didn't feel like a little boy anymore. He felt like a polar bear. Then Jack felt something even stranger. He felt like a flying polar bear. Jack swirled around as if his arms and legs were giant wings, and the moonlit sea ice was a glassy sky. He remembered what the seal hunter said. Polar bears can fly. That's the end for today. Until tomorrow.